Well, thanks for joining us again. We are here at the 5 Milton Edgewood Chamber of Commerce office, and we are continuing our candidate interviews today. And I am joined today by Justin Camarata.
Hello.
And Justin is running for Port Commissioner for Port of Tacoma.
Yep, position 3.
And thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself, where your background, where you come from, and why you decided to run for Port Commissioner.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm a University of Washington graduate. Go Huskies. I live in Tacoma with my wife and our young kids, and last year I served as the interim Tacoma City Council member for District 2. And if you know Tacoma at all, that includes the Port of Tacoma and the Tide Flats, as well as downtown and a lot of the job centers down there. So I got good exposure on hiring department heads, on working on the Tide Flats sub-area plan, on a lot of the things that these governments are doing to interface together. And during that time, I think I gained a really deep appreciation for just how much the port does in our region, but also, in my view, things that we could be doing even better. So I decided to throw my hat into the ring to bring a new voice and a new perspective, both on that sub-area plan and also on how we hire and how we look at environmental protections, what kinds of local jobs we're creating, just kind of bring a different voice and direction to it. So by day, I work in the private sector. I'm a software project manager, so I've worked for both Fortune 500 and startup tech companies. So I've spent a lot of time doing that. I've been on a number of civic boards and advisory groups, and groups like Forterra, Downtown on the Go, Channel 253. I work on the board of an organization called Startup 253, where we help entrepreneurs grow small local tech companies. So I wanted to bring kind of a different perspective to things. And again, I think with my experience as a Tacoma City Council member, I have direct experience writing a biennial budget, hiring department heads, and working directly on the sub-area plan, which is certainly a big process right now, helping chart the future of the port and the Tide Flats.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. And I think that you answered the next question, which is about public service. So it sounds like you've had a lot of opportunities to serve, especially on the Tacoma City Council.
Yeah,
so that's great.
I served on some other commissions too. City of Tacoma has a board of ethics. We had a transportation planning group that I was part of. And then on the City Council, I did things like government performance and finance committee, community vitality and safety. So also worked with Puget Sound Regional Council and a variety of groups that actually directly interface with the port quite a bit. Also very briefly sat on the RAMP partnership, which is Regional Access Mobility. So
yeah, I go to the RAMP meetings.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, very good.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the strengths you see at the port right now? Things are going along well right now, but what are some of the strengths you see, and how do you think you can improve upon those?
Well, I think the port right now, it really is our economic engine. When you look at how many jobs are created in Pierce County with it, I believe it's over 29,000 jobs is the official number, and over $3 billion of revenue. It's substantial, and so that revenue that goes back into our municipal governments, that goes back into families' homes and pockets and how they spend. So certainly it's providing a lot of work and a lot of stability and employment opportunities here. Where I think we could possibly do a little bit better is there's really 3 key things that I want to focus on during my candidacy, and if I'm elected, things I'll do as a commissioner too. And one of those is what I file under economy broadly, and that is just how we're actually going about creating local jobs. So one of the things that we started doing in the city of Tacoma is what's called a community workforce agreement and priority hire. So what we're doing there is a very strategic kind of partnership between school districts and labor unions and a lot of the businesses that we work with down there. And we want to be very intentional about hiring more local people and creating more pathways to local jobs for local residents. And as I'm sure you're familiar, a lot of people don't want to go to 4-year university after they graduate from high school. So having a more strategic, regimented setup for those people to go into a living wage, family wage job right out of high school and have a long-term apprenticeship paths, I think that's a really, really big opportunity for us. So the Port of Oakland did a project like this. They did an 8-year pilot project. They worked with several big companies, with labor groups and with the surrounding municipalities. And they basically said, I believe it was all public projects over, I think, $3 million or so of public infrastructure. They were going to commit to hiring at least a set number of people from within the community and getting them opportunities and training. And it wound up being very, very successful over an 8-year period. So median wages went up during that time. More housing affordability became less of a problem, and more people had access to jobs. So Labor unions love this. A lot of big businesses I've talked to have been very open to this, and they see it as a positive way to put more money back into the community. And where those jobs don't exist, if they go out and try to find them, then at least they can help contribute to developing that candidate pipeline. Excuse me. So that's something I definitely want to focus on. Partnerships would be another one, and with labor and with cities, I think that's certainly part of it. But I think there's opportunities to improve how we all work together with the port and how we interface. As I talked a little bit to the city of Fife, to the city of Puyallup, the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, the city of Tacoma, and it just feels to me that there's a lot of ways where there could be a lot more collaboration and more close partnership on certain shared priorities. So I think making sure that we get out there and that we find ways to distribute more dollars into the community, working with the transit agencies too, certainly with traffic, that's a big concern in this whole area and certainly in Tacoma too. Making sure that we strengthen those and that we have a good working relationship, that we don't see each other as at odds with each other anymore, that we actually see each other as regional partners and stakeholders, that we're not fighting for things, we're actually working together to drive the economy forward. And certainly also on environmental protections. I think a lot of people they talk to, no matter what side of the aisle they're on or what their interests are, they remember the time when the Port of Tacoma, driving by it smelled bad, it's polluted water, polluted air. It was one of the most contaminated sites in the United States for a very long time. And so I think just about everybody, regardless of their views, they don't want to go back to that. They want to see us move forward in a more sustainable, vibrant way. And ultimately, that's a good way to attract more businesses too, right? I mean, businesses don't just go where it's cheap. They go where people want to live. Mm-hmm. They go where workers will want to relocate to and settle and raise families in. So certainly as I take a look at the kinds of jobs we're seeking out and the kinds of things that we're going to pursue, I want to make sure that we're doing it with climate change in mind, with local air and water quality in mind, and that we're doing everything we can to protect the environment around us. I'm raising small children here, and I want to make sure that the economy here is good and vibrant and healthy, but that the land and the air and the water are too. So those are all things that I plan to focus on.
Since you brought up the environment piece of it, how do you stand on LNG?
So LNG, I think there's certainly some positives to it. No question, it burns cleaner at the source. And for the biggest pro I see of it is that for the people working on the ships, it does burn a lot cleaner. When you look at the overall net impact of actually producing LNG, though, it's actually, according to some studies, worse than burning coal when you factor in that there's fracking, that there's risk of methane leak, and certainly it's been a very contentious issue within the community. I'm disappointed to see how much animosity there is over it and how testy it gets. And the Puyallup Tribe, one of our biggest partners, they don't support the project. And to me, I look at it and I ask what kinds of businesses we're seeking to attract. And I think everybody, whether they're pro or against LNG, they want to see cleaner air. They want to see healthier environment for our workers. And I think there's ways that we need to work towards that. I don't personally believe that LNG is the path forward when you consider all the negative impacts of it. But certainly I'm committed to working with absolutely everybody to get the cleanest solutions possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So next question, I think you may have touched on this a little bit, but I'll bring it back so that you can kind of clarify what areas of improvement you think could be made at the port.
Okay.
And what is the biggest issue there? How would you go about?
Yeah, like I said, I'm focusing on economy, environment, and partnership, and I see those as three key important parts of the port and things that I think we have opportunities to improve on in all three of those. So environment,
economy,
environment, partnership.
Okay.
And I'll focus on the partnership part at first. So a good example, the port is ultimately, it's a public agency. So even though it's working with businesses and it is working with these companies and with chambers of commerce and economic development boards, it is something that people pay property tax for, and it's something that has a duty to deliver a good return on investment and act in the public's best interest. So, I think too often the attitude has been, this isn't something the general public needs to concern themselves with. This isn't something that they need to worry about. This is just for us to manage. And, a few years back when there was a proposed methanol plant down there, people were very, very upset and startled by that, and understandably so. It was going to be one of the largest water-using projects in the region's history. And a lot of people were very concerned with the notification process of that and how that went down. And They wrote a citizen initiative in the city of Tacoma to put these kinds of projects to a vote. Now, without commenting on the legality of that measure or not, I think the port's response at the time was to take those people to court and then to use public dollars in order to sue them, and then later also use that same argument to say we don't need to disclose our spending of those public dollars in the Washington State PDC. And to me, that was a sign that the relationship with the public in a number of ways wasn't what it could be. So rather than proactively engaging with those community members, even if they came to different conclusions and even if they disagreed, instead of going to those groups and saying, here's what this project's going to be, here's what some of the impacts are, here's the way that it's going to benefit you, what are some concerns you have and how can we address them, I think lawsuits and contentiousness, it fosters a lot of mistrust. So to me, that sort of thing is what we need to move away from really badly. And also certainly this kind of back and forth contentiousness with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians and even many businesses. This isn't just about environmental issues. I've talked to businesses that say they would like their relationship with the port to be better, and they would like, talk to some entrepreneurs downtown Tacoma that think it would be fantastic if the port were more open to partnering directly with small businesses and with the University of Washington and all these other groups to kind of foster this more equitable environmental and economic engine for the whole entire community. So making sure that we have the best possible relationships with as many possible groups out there, whether we all come to the same conclusions or not, I think that's really, really important. And ultimately, the more goodwill we have in the community and the more goodwill we have with these agencies, the more likely we are to achieve the better outcomes that we all want, which is a healthy, clean, safe, secure Port of Tacoma.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about the Tacoma, the Tide Flats sub-area plan.
Mm-hmm.
What would your priority outcomes be for the sub-area plan?
Yeah, so for anybody watching who may not know what that is, the sub-area plan, it is the long-range planning process that the city of Tacoma is underway with right now, along with the Port of Tacoma and the Puyallup Tribe of Indians and several stakeholder groups, including City of Fife, Pierce County, various other groups of that nature. So that is a long-term plan for what kinds of businesses they want to attract, what things they want for the land and what they're going to be doing going forward. So for me, I think this is a good opportunity for us to take a step back and, lots changed since the last time the Port of Tacoma had a strategic plan. I believe the last one was made in 2008 or so. And since then, we've got new information about the Northwest Seaport Alliance, which is that joint operating agreement between the Port of Seattle and Port of Tacoma. New data is available about climate change and the impacts of industrial activity on climate change and making sure that our businesses are healthy and thriving, but also that we're looking out for the economy. Lots of new things have been made available. So I think for me, this is a really great opportunity to reset and to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So things that I want to see for me, I want to make sure that we are moving in a direction that doesn't just expand what we've always done and doubles down on industries that are frankly in decline according to most economic reports. I want to make sure that we're being very intentional and strategic about pursuing the new jobs of the future. So I'm thinking things like cross-laminated timber, hydrogen fuel cell assembly, electric terminals, batteries, electrification projects of different kinds, cleaner fuels, different kinds of green manufacturing, things of that nature. Port of Los Angeles is doing a giant solar initiative with some of their workforce there. I want to make sure that we're pursuing those kinds of businesses that not only contribute to local economic health, but also contribute to overall environmental health, and that we're setting the right kinds of scientifically sound policies in place to make sure that we're looking out for the environment in the soundest way possible. Also that the Puyallup Tribe has the appropriate seat at the table, that all these interests are represented, and I think too often it's presented as either environment or economy, and I really don't think it's that. When you look at the jobs that are coming up now and where the growth opportunities are, it's in these new industries that are popping up, and right now a lot of those jobs are going to other ports, including ports that are some of our bigger competitors. Ports in New York, Los Angeles, Vancouver is getting some of these too. I want to make sure that the Port of Tacoma is a serious contender for those.
Okay, great. So next question. How do you see the Port of Tacoma interfacing with the South Sound community right now, and how do you think that can be improved upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think too often there's, in my experience at least, it's very reactive at the moment. So it's either coming out to either sell a particular project when there's community concerns, or there's a bit of an occasional tour to talk about what the port's doing next, but it tends to not be as proactive as I feel it could be. So when I was on the city council, one of the first things that we did during my first, I'd say 60 days there, was schedule a bit of a community stakeholder tour where we went out and we met with as many businesses as possible, neighborhood groups, business associations, certainly the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA, which is now called something else. Try to get a good sense of where people are, what the concerns that they're facing are, and just go on a bit of a listening tour. And again, I think in the spirit of the port being a public agency that is supposed to act in public interest, making sure that we're out there listening and not just trying to sell an idea or a concept or a project or do damage control, right? I want it to be proactive. I want that relationship to be strong, and starting that off on the right foot is really, really important, I think. So something I was, again, able to do as a city council member was go out there and do that with the community. So I would make sure that we're doing that as port commissioners also.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So next question, how can we be leveraging the work on economic development outside of the port to attract and retain businesses and family wage jobs in the South Sound region?
Yeah, so I already touched a little bit on the community workforce agreement, and I think that's a great local economic development tool. But I think one of the things as I talk to businesses here and to some of the freight companies and certainly municipalities around here too is we're going to need some serious infrastructure upgrades at some point soon. So think right now, you being in Fife right now, you're at the epicenter of all the traffic, of all these roads spilling and converging together. You've got freight, you've got single passenger vehicles, you've got buses, and all these things are all fighting for some of that same space. And so the congestion can just be absolutely terrible. And I think certainly the legislature did some work on State Route 167 this year, but I think there's going to be even more that we could do to kind of extend some of those partnerships. And when you look at some of the other ports and that we're often losing business to, one of the ways that they're more competitive than we are is better infrastructure setup. So Port of Vancouver, as an example, they've got a really, really strong rail network that they're moving a lot of their cargo on rail, and their municipal transit agencies are partnering with their ports to help get the workers moving around, take some of the cars off the road so that the trucks and freight aren't competing with people just trying to commute between their jobs and their homes. So I think we need to start taking a serious look at what kinds of partnerships we have in place for that, and also what it's going to mean to upgrade our infrastructure to be as competitive as possible. The Panama Canal certainly has been widened recently, so there's all kinds of infrastructure upgrades that have happened there. And a lot of our infrastructure now, frankly, was built at a different time before the massive projected regional growth. You look at Puget Sound Regional Council's growth projections for our area, and they're showing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of new people coming over here over the next several decades. And so if we want to remain competitive and we want ports to continue to, Port of Seattle and Port of Tacoma to continue to work together, we need to take a long, hard look at how we're allocating our infrastructure dollars and what our plan will be. And I think certainly updating our strategic plan to account for that is going to be really important. Also making sure that with the Northwest Seaport Alliance, we're getting our share of the dollars there. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on certainly the Terminal 5 project in Seattle, but making sure that some of those dollars are coming back to us too, and we're getting more expenses on rail and on roads and how the cargo and freight move together. So I think that's going to be a really, really important focus for me.
All right. Well, expanding on the transportation conversation, how do you see public transportation and freight mobility partnering to reduce congestion, increase transit ridership, and get goods to the market faster?
Yeah, I love this question. So as I mentioned, I'm I'm a software project manager by day, and in this point in time right now, most of that work is in King County. There's some in Tacoma, Pierce County, but the majority of people that are in that field that live down here commute up north in some capacity. So I'm a pretty regular Sounder rider or Sound Transit Express buses. And speaking with some of the folks at the Port of Seattle, and they have a very good partnership with Sound Transit and with King County Metro Transit. A lot of their employees use that to get to work every day, and also helps take some of those cars off the road. If more people have the ability to get to and from their jobs without driving, then a lot more people are going to do it, especially if with Sound Transit 3, that rail project is coming live. That's a massive regional investment for Pierce Transit and for Pierce County as a whole. So making sure that those options are robust and available, and that our ports are strategic close partners in that, help take as many cars off the road as possible, that that helps freight drivers, that helps just about everybody. That helps the commute times, that helps that State Route 167 congestion that we hear about every day. That helps the people that are in Fife and Milton and Edgewood. That helps just about every single person. So one big area of focus for me is going to be making sure that we have a good partnership, that the funding is there, that we have them as part of our long range plan, and that with Sound Transit 3 projects coming live over the next 15, 20 years, that we're being very, very intentional about making sure that transit is part of our plan, and that people see that as a viable option to get to and from their jobs.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so there's a couple of other opponents you have in the race, and if you could ask them a question, what question would that be, and how would you answer the same question?
Yeah, I think they're both great, respectable people with great resumes, and I think they've both done a lot with their lives and careers, and I have nothing but respect for both of them. I think my question for both of them, as I hear them talk, is I would like to hear a little more focus on getting the port to eventual carbon neutrality. I think that's something that is not discussed often enough with the Port of Tacoma, and certainly other ports are looking towards this, and they're doing this in partnership with businesses and with labor and with other government agencies. And Port of Tacoma right now, there's not enough focus on that. And so when I hear plans to expand our fossil fuel facilities and plans to deregulate some of our environmental standards, I'm left wondering what our serious plans are going to be to make sure that, as I touched on earlier, our children are left with a better, cleaner environment, and that our businesses have a more healthy, competitive environment to operate in. So as far as how I would answer that question, I think we need to take a serious, long, hard look, as I mentioned, at what kinds of businesses we're seeking to attract and what kinds of rules we're putting in place to ensure that the water's healthy, the air is healthy, that our workers are able to breathe in a healthy bit of air for them, and that they're not breathing in all that particulate, but also that we're not choosing to remedy that with projects that are inadvertently even more damaging for the environment. I want to make sure that we're including carbon neutrality as part of our strategic plan, that we have serious steps that we're taking to get there by 2030 or 2050, whatever time frame that needs to be. I believe Port of Seattle is looking at it by the year 2050. So I think we need to be at least that portion also. So that would be my question for both of them.
Okay, great. And so we're nearing the end here, and I'm just curious if you have any last words, anything that you'd like to say, anything that we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah.
Some closing comments?
Yeah, well, thank you again for the invitation to this. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about with the Port of Tacoma is we're at a bit of this transitional period. That's something that I hear very often, and I think just about everybody recognizes the port is so pivotal and important for Pierce County, that there's so many opportunities for jobs. It has so many jobs now, but we could do even better with it. There's more that we could be doing even right now, and certainly my two boys are 9 and 6, and I'm thinking a lot about what kind of community I'm raising them in, and what kind of environment we're setting up for them, and what kind of competitive landscape we're setting up for them too. It's my hope that as they go to schools here, that they'll if they don't wind up going somewhere else after school, that they stay here, and that they have lots of opportunities and lots of economic options available for them. So for me, I'm thinking about the port of the future, not just the port now in the next 5 years, not just the port and how it impacts shareholder bottom line now for the next quarterly reports, but what's the port going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now? What kinds of businesses are we seeking to attract? And as you look at all this green manufacturing and new kinds of jobs and things that are going live in other ports right now, this is no longer a pipe dream. This is stuff that's happening now. And I want to make sure that Pierce County becomes a leader in these kinds of things, that we're seen as the standard bearer of these, that we become known as a leader in these kinds of industries. So I look forward to partnering with chambers of commerce, with labor unions, with environmental groups, with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians. I want this to be truly all of us coming together, looking beyond the past and things that we've done in the past, and making this the strongest and most sustainable thing that it could possibly be.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank those who are watching. I see that Aaron Williams is watching, and Austin Nelson. So thank
Hi,
you.
Austin.
Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who won't be watching live, I want to thank each of you for watching. And I encourage people to share this video. We've done almost all of the candidates now for a port commissioner, and It's really important for people to learn as much as they can about the candidates. I know I got my ballot in the mail last week, so ballots have been mailed, and voting day is August 6th, so make sure those ballots get in by August 6th.
Pierce County drop boxes.
And,
yep.
Yeah, and again, please share these videos, and we will see you next time. We'll probably take a little bit of a break here with the interviews until the primary is over, and then we'll get going again with more interviews. But thanks again, and thank you, Justin, for coming and
Thank you,
joining
Laura.
us. All right.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.